As input costs continue to rise, some ag producers are trying several options to offset those expenses. Electricity is one of those costs that can be a challenge to lower. That is one reason why solar power is becoming a bit more appealing for energy alternatives for some producers. Market Journal's Bill Dodd caught up with Extension educator John Hay to discuss the current state of solar power in ag operations.
There may be several different reasons you may be thinking of utilizing solar power on your agricultural operation. You may be interested in the potential economic benefits, or perhaps you'd just like to be more eco-friendly. In any case, solar power on your operation can have its rewards and challenges. Before you make any investment, it will be imperative to do your homework first. As Extension educator John Hay puts it, success isn't choosing to install solar. Success is doing a good analysis of the resources to make the best decisions.
Well, we're talking about solar on the farm and how what is the feasibility and what is some of the economics, and we're really trying to get them to do some homework ahead of getting a system or ahead of signing any contracts, because we want them to avoid some of the major issues. So they really need to be contacting their utility early to make sure that how does the rate schedule work? How does it work with that particular utility? Things like that. But there is some utilities that, as the utilities reach a certain amount of installed systems, they can change their policies, and those changes in policies locally are a pretty big deal. Also, really doing their homework with installers to try to understand what's a good installer and how to find one that's going to do a good job for them if they decide they want solar.
There are an ever-increasing number of solar options for today's agricultural producers, from solar-powered irrigation systems to outright solar farming contracts. Each operation will have different goals in mind when implementing solar technologies on their land and everyday workflow. So it's important to understand that farms that have more consistent use of solar have the best chance to gain value.
Well, solar works really good works a little better for loads that are more consistent through the year, right? So it's something we use all the time. Solar isn't always the best application when we put it on an intermittent load like irrigation, and that's because of how the value of that electricity is when I put it on, when I use it, because I'm either using it or it's going onto the grid, and there's different values for that electricity, and so I'd rather use it myself. That's where the higher value is. And so that if I have an irrigation system, I'm only using it during 3 months a year, and I'm putting it on the grid, maybe getting lesser value the rest of the year. So the economics aren't always as good. So it's important to kind of think about what is the load. But so you have a load that's maybe a little more consistent. The cost of a system is going to range from maybe $2.50 to a little over $3 per watt installed. But again, that's where I scale it. How big is that system? A small system is not going to cost as much as a larger one. But there's kind of a range in price. But by doing it per watt, I can kind of think, is it a 10 kW system or a 25 or something like that?
Another thing to consider is your operation's access to your local power grid. While running an off-grid system may result in some energy savings and a slight reduction in the overall carbon footprint of your operation, the cost to build and maintain that system could be quite high.
Having, in most cases, off-grid systems are really expensive, and really you have to think twice about whether that's going to work out, or there's maybe some better options. So grid-connected systems are the most economical, and so grid access is really important. And we have some laws in Nebraska, and there are some federal laws that allow grid access, but we have to also be very careful with how the utility interprets those rules, and we understand what is the value of that electricity based on the utility's rate schedule. So that utility can really dictate whether this is a good deal or isn't.
When making the decision to invest in solar for economic benefit, it's important to note returns on investment are highly variable from location to location. While John is an advocate of solar power, he's much more passionate about making sure our producers are doing their due diligence in finding out all the pros and cons of installing solar on their particular operation so they can get the most out of the systems they invest in.
Well, really, it's not that I'm trying to tell people that they should or shouldn't invest in solar. It's that people are interested in solar, right? So we want a lot of people in Nebraska are interested in solar for different reasons, individual personal reasons, and then we try to say, let's see if we can understand the economics and understand the pros and cons of this system so they can make good decisions. And so payback is ranging maybe from 8 to 14 years, and this is depending on if a farm system that can acquire like the USDA REAP grant might be a little closer to 8, while if a home that can't access that REAP grant may be closer to 14. So there's a lot of variability in payback, and there are some areas where the paybacks are much worse than that, and there may be a couple that they're a little better. So it's pretty variable out there with respect to payback.
For about the last decade now, solar power has seen an increase in output, while components of solar systems have become more affordable. As the industry continues to grow, you may want to consider helping your operation grow with solar. But you'll want to make sure you do your homework first. Reporting for Market Journal, I'm Bill Dodd.